Now, Itzcoatl had a right-hand man, a chief advisor, who is a very important figure in Aztec history, and his name was Takailel. Takailel, basically, he is responsible for a number of reforms in the Aztec Empire. Takailel was not a king himself. He remained a chief advisor, but he was a chief advisor not just for Itzcoatl, but for several Aztec kings. So he was around for a long period of time, longer than any one Aztec king. And during that time, he was kind of running things behind the scenes. So he is responsible for a number of reforms which changed the character of the Aztec Empire as they started to develop into this great empire. All right, so let's talk about some of Tlacaelel's reforms. Number one, he ordered the burning of all of the books of conquered states. So as the Aztecs went out and conquered other city-states, they would burn their books. Why are they burning their books? Because Tlacaelel wants to rewrite history with the Aztecs being seen as a much more powerful central group. All right, because we just talked about the Aztecs' migration story. You heard it, right? They were a pretty lowly group. They weren't some prestigious group, right? They were kind of a lowly group, looked down upon by other civilized people in central Mexico. All right, so Tlacaelel wants to rewrite history so the Aztecs have a more central position, so that they're seen as a more prestigious group. Okay, so how do you do that? You got to get rid of history, because the Aztecs aren't in that history, or if they are, they're seen as a lowly group, right? So burn all those books of all these conquered states. Get rid of their history so that you can rewrite history and make a better image for your empire. All right, so that's one of his reforms. Another one of the things that Tlacaelel wanted to accomplish was to make the Aztecs seem like they were a chosen people. Right? That they were chosen to become the leaders of this great empire. It was meant to be. It was inevitable, right? It had to happen. It was meant to be as far as the history, right? The gods have chosen the Aztecs to become these great leaders, to have this great empire. And so Tlacaelel wants to create this image for the Aztecs. Another thing is he claims that the Aztecs are the true heirs of the Toltec lineage. Remember I talked earlier about how Acamapichtli, he is connected to that Toltec bloodline, right? Because they married in with the Tepanecs. So now you have the Aztecs really emphasizing that Toltec connection, and they are claiming that they are the one and only true heirs of the Toltecs, right? Because the Toltecs were the last most powerful group that existed in central Mexico, right? And so the Aztecs are trying to connect to that and say, like, yeah, we're legitimate. We're not just some guys who migrated in from nowhere and took over everything. No, we are legitimate. We are the true heirs of the Toltec bloodline, right? So no one's going to question their legitimacy if everyone believes that. And maybe over time, after a couple of generations, people will start to believe that the Aztecs are legitimately connected to the Toltecs, right? And that they were following in that tradition. Right? So you see, it's all about perspective. It's all about how people view the Aztecs. They're rewriting history. They're giving the Aztecs a new image. And this is all happening under the leadership of this chief advisor named Tlacaelel. All right, so he's a very important figure. He changes everything. Right? So this is how the Aztecs are starting to establish their empire. All right. Now, another thing that Tlacaelel is known for is increasing the importance of human sacrifice, right? There's a need for captives, and why is this? Well, Tlacaelel is responsible for supporting this idea that we need to have human blood in order to keep the sun in the sky. Now, where does that come from? We'll talk a little bit more about this later, but basically, the idea is that in order to keep the universe working and keep nature balanced and keep the world as we know it continuing is to offer up human sacrifice, right? And so Tlacaelel is going to support this idea and really kind of push it forward so that the Aztecs will have a reason, a spiritual reason, for why they are going out and conquering a number of different peoples. Okay. Sometimes they will go out and have a full-on war with another state. Like, you know, you'll have a large Aztec army coming. Sometimes they'll fight a low-scale war known as a flowery war. Okay, a flowery war, basically, this is a war where you have the Aztecs and their enemies sending out their best warriors to kind of do an exhibition. right? And yeah, people will die or people will be captured during that exhibition. In fact, that's one of the reasons behind the Flowery Wars. One of the reasons is so that you can gain captives, so that you can sacrifice them, and this is supposed to feed the gods, feed the sun by shedding this blood, and so the sun will continue to remain in the sky, and life as we know it can go on. All right. But another reason for the Flowery Wars, more practical reason, is that you're trying to intimidate your neighbors, trying to get them to give in so that they just join the Aztec Empire. Maybe you couldn't take them out, in one shot, or it'll be a long war. So you do these little small scale wars where you just have a few warriors go out there and they send a few warriors out and they fight each other. You take captives, and then over time, over a long period of time, these Flowery Wars went on for a long period of time. Over a while, eventually that state will become weakened. You take some of their best warriors, right? And eventually they become weakened, and now the Aztecs could go in there and conquer them. Okay, so there's a reason behind this, behind all this sacrifices. It's about expansion. It's about expanding the empire, and Tlacaelel is going to play a major role in this. So as the Aztecs begin to establish their empire, they're going to ally themselves with a couple of other states in central Mexico, and they will be known as the Triple Alliance. So you have Tenochtitlan, right? And then you also have Texcoco, which is another state in that area, and Tlacopan. These three powers combine together, they ally together, and they're known as the Triple Alliance, right? The Tenochtitlan, the Aztecs, they are the dominant power of the three. And finally, we'll end off talking about another Aztec king named Huitzot. Huitzot is known for conquest. He greatly expanded the Aztec Empire. During the rule of Huitzot, the Aztecs conquered the majority of central Mexico, and they also expanded all the way down towards Guatemala, into the area of the Mayans, right? And so Huitzot, he's a king who was responsible for a lot of territory coming under the control of the Aztecs. Huitzot is also responsible for major construction that took place in the Aztec Empire, particularly in Tenochtitlan, the capital city, right, the island city. And so in the capital city, under the leadership of Huitzot, you have the building of the Great Temple. Okay, the Great Temple, this is the big Aztec temple. It's like a double temple. There's two staircases going up this temple. We'll talk more about it later on, but there's this Great Temple. Basically, you have two staircases going up. One side of the temple is dedicated towards Huitzilopochtli. Right, remember we talked about the old Aztec god. He was this hummingbird god, but during the migration, he kind of transformed into a sun god. So one side of the Great Temple is dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, right? Because there's two staircases, there's two temples on top of this Great Temple in Tenochtitlan. The other side is dedicated to the rain god Tlaloc. Okay, remember how we were talking about the Tarascans, how they don't have a rain god? Well, the Aztecs do, right? They have the rain god that's similar to other Mesoamerican civilizations, Tlaloc, and so the other side of the Great Temple is dedicated to Tlaloc. So you have this big double temple that's located there in Tenochtitlan. Huitzot, he is the king who's in charge when that is built. He is the one who builds it, okay? All right, and also Huitzot is also responsible for an aqueduct that brings fresh water in from Coyoacan into Tenochtitlan. So this is an island, the capital city, Tenochtitlan. It's on an island. There's not a lot of fresh water there, and so Huitzot is going to build an aqueduct to bring fresh water in to the city to support the population, the growing population that is there on Tenochtitlan.